All right. Tom says, "What do you think is something to focus on when writing a short story that doesn't need to be the point of focus for longer works?" Okay, that's interesting. Uh, Actually, I think you have more freedom in short stories. The fact that it's a shorter space means to be concise, so everything that you can cut is good, and especially cutting from the beginning. I have a tendency to kind of weave my way into a story, especially when I'm writing here on stream, because I'm kind of figuring it out as I go. But the beginning of the story is the place to cut. So even though you're trying to be concise with a short story, I do think you have more freedom in the sense that you can write ideas in a short story that probably would be more difficult to do in a novel. So in that sense, I think the field is wide open for what you can do in a short story. And again, you can write anything you want as a novel. So technically, anything that can be a short story can be a novel, but you're kind of safe for experimenting with short stories. In terms of the short story, I think a particular tone is important. So it can be a multiple tone, like a tone with layers. So whereas a novel can kind of go back and forth between different tones from scene to scene, I think a short story benefits if you want it to be moody and dark, then you kind of have that be an underlying theme all the way through. If you want it to be humorous but tragic, even though those things are opposite, you can focus on those cross purposes and kind of have that be a theme all the way through. Now, of course, the emotional levels can go up and down and probably should, but I think identifying the tone of your short story, like what kind of feeling are you putting across as you're developing your characters, developing the plot. I do think the action is important, and by that I don't mean that it has to be balls to the wall like car chase all the way through. But like something needs to happen. So even when you kind of have a cerebral story, I guess a little like this one where people are thinking things through, you always kind of have to think about moving the action. Now that's also true in novels. You don't want to have too many transitional chapters, but I think in a short story in particular, you want it to move forward. So everything needs to kind of move the story along to its ending, even when you're kind of up inside the character's head. Those pieces need to tie into something else and kind of pull you forward as well. I do think in a short story in particular, it serves you to figure out what the themes are, and I don't think you have to figure that out in the first draft. A lot of times you'll notice those themes in the editing. So you'll go through and be like, oh, I have a lot of blood symbolism in this story, so I'm going to focus on that more. Or like with this one, I kind of had him go into a factory floor in the afterlife. So I kind of saw the opportunity earlier on when they were kind of moving people like an assembly line to mention like being pieces inside a factory. So, like with a short story in particular, whether it's 2,000 words or 8,000 words, whatever, I think the more of those pieces you find, like those hidden themes that maybe you didn't notice in the first draft, like in this case, the fact that it's healthcare and it's in the afterlife is a factory, and they're just kind of trying to move people through. That wasn't really a theme I was going for when I first wrote it, but in this edit and in the next one, I'm probably going to focus on that factory face in the crowd sort of idea as I draw that out. And so for a short story in particular, if you can find those things and kind of connect them through, even though it's not the main purpose of the story, it's the through line that's going to kind of connect it all for the reader to where all the pieces of the puzzle kind of make sense. Again, all of those things can apply to novels as well, but I think they're particularly important when it comes to short stories. That was a good question, and it's actually kind of one that I roll around in my head almost continuously when I'm writing short stories.